I know for a fact that this build is going to give us the most possible performance for a $2,000 gaming PC, but I also want to get something else from it. If you're following this along at home, these parts should work really well for a new pure performance gaming PC where we're trying to get as much FPS for our dollar as possible. But personally, I hope this ends up being good enough for us to sell on ZTTbuilds.com as well. Currently, our highest end build rocks an RTX 4070 Ti Super, so we're busting out the 4080 Super for this build, as well as some wood grain action up there. We're gonna see if this build ends up being good enough, all after a quick word from today's sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by GVG Mall, and you probably already know that I've been using them for so long to activate Windows on a ton of my own builds. They're actually running a huge sale right now, which boosts my normal 18% discount up to 25% off if you use code ZTT18, and I'll have that linked at the top of the description. They not only have Windows keys, but also a ton of other stuff such as Office, and even game keys for platforms like Steam, Origin, and Uplay, and they even have console stuff too, like PSN prepaid cards as well. Activating Windows is super simple and only takes like 3 minutes total, so activate Windows today and remove that nasty watermark, and don't forget to use ZTT18 for 25% off.
Alright, so for the parts list, we're definitely starting with the Ryzen 7 7800X3D because even after the 9000 series launch, it's still the king of gaming CPUs. Here's some other reasons why I went with it. Feel free to screenshot or watch this video back if you need to. What's cooling it is the ID Cooling FX360 Pro, which was the curveball of this build, and we'll definitely talk about that later because it curved pretty hard on us. The motherboard we're going with is the Gigabyte X670 Gaming X AX V2, which we're actually already using for the Shadow Strike PC, so that works out well. The RAM is the G-Skill Ripjaws S5 32GB DDR5 kit that's clocked at a faster than what I usually use, 6400 MHz. For the SSD, we got a Team Group MP44L 2TB NVMe. The power supply is the MSI Mag A750GL, which is a PCIe 5 and ATX 3.0 unit, which is perfect for our GPU. And speaking of which, the exact 4080 Super is the PMY Verto model, which isn't super specific. It was just the most affordable all-black version at the time I was buying. I'm also putting a $6 GPU sag bracket underneath here, but the GPU did come with one if you want to use that instead. Now, this case is what I'm the most interested in because it's the new Antec Flux and yet another wood grain option hitting the market. This one is all about the minimal and elegant aesthetics as well as cooling because it comes with 5 pre-installed fans, which is definitely all you need. With 3 120s up at the front for intake, a back 140 for exhaust, and even a 120 reverse on the bottom, we're definitely getting all of the cooling we need for our high-end CPU and GPU. The bottom fan should help bring in airflow from underneath the PSU basement as well as from the backside panel vents, and I'm also definitely digging the fan hub that came included to make this as easy as possible. It's got ports for all 5 of the total fans, but even though they aren't ARGB, it's still got ARGB ports in case you eventually swap them out. And finally, the wood grain is what a lot of people seem to be moving towards, including myself, and this is actually real wood, which even came with a certification to prove it. Very cool touch. Now, while building this $2,000 pure performance build, I had 2 major incidents happen that are worth sharing. The first one is that we are definitely under no circumstances going to sell a $2,000 build with this ID Cooling AIO. If you want to use it one time for your own personal build, by all means go for it. It's really not that bad, but when you have to build with it possibly multiple times per day, it's definitely going to get annoying very quickly. Not only were the instructions a bit difficult to understand and navigate, but way worse than that are the holes in the radiator for the screws because they weren't machined perfectly for the screws that were provided. I struggled with both installing the fans onto the radiator and installing the radiator onto the case because I had to sometimes put my body weight into screwing these down because the holes weren't perfect. It didn't feel like I was breaking it or anything, but it just felt like I was dealing with an amateur product that I really don't want to use again, especially when this build is specifically designed for a high-class gaming experience. Now, we did get perfectly fine performance and cooling out of it, so again, I think it's fine enough if you want a budget 360mm AIO, just not something I want to deal with often. The next major incident while building is that this Antec Flux seriously might have just become my absolute favorite case to work in. I hate that Antec sent this over because that doesn't help with the validity of what I'm saying, but seriously, I enjoyed this even more than the Montech King 95 Pro, which was my previous favorite case to build in. For cable management, there's just so many zip tie points and even this dual channel system here on the left side, which I didn't even have to fully utilize. All of the fans were were pre-cable managed into the hub, so I didn't even have to touch it. And I really love this side mounting system on the right, where instead of having to zip tie down the fan cables and the 4+4 CPU power cable, you can just tuck them underneath here without having to use any tools. Building inside of here is not only super simple, but it also makes the entire building process go quicker, which is literally what I'm looking for in a case to sell on ZTTbuilds.com. Overall, this build turned out amazing aesthetically, and I think we could definitely sell this, but the only thing we'll have to research and swap out is the AIO, like I said.
All right, so I got the PC here loaded up in my house. It's a little bit late in the night, so I got my cup of coffee, but yeah, let's see what this thing can do.
The first game I tested was X Defiant, since that's pretty much the only shooter I've been playing lately. Honestly, I know the trend lately is that the game is sort of dying, but it's still a lot of fun for me, so I hope its popularity picks back up at some point. I put the settings up to 4K and Ultra, and this was a super smooth 110 to 130 average FPS on pretty much every map. I didn't notice any sort of crazy stuttering, and I know this isn't a super graphically demanding game, but in 4K it still looks pretty impressive, so I was definitely happy to see this kind of performance. The GPU was being fully utilized the entire time, around 99%, and the temperature never really got above the mid-60s, and our CPU was around the mid-50s as well. Overall, this game ran great.
Now let's test out Black Myth, and I actually haven't tried this yet because it just came out yesterday, and I've heard that this game is a beast to run, so we'll take it a little easy. We're gonna stay in 4K with VSync off and see how that goes, but for graphics, I am gonna leave DLSS on. I heard good things about it so far, and 4K medium, let's see what Black Myth can do. I mean, I just hit start game, and this is already looking really nice. All right, we're just learning how to play here. The graphics are actually insane already. Oh, that's how you dodge. Okay. Oh, oh. Oh! I mean, these effects are so cool. This is probably the best graphics I've ever seen in a video game, and I'm just now making it out of, like, the main cutscene. Oh, no! First crash. My bad. I actually forgot to install the driver specifically for Black Myth. Oh, that's a big dude. Have I mentioned that I'm not good at Souls-like games? Oh my god, that was super fun. This PC is an absolute beast. It completely smoked every single game that I tested.
Those games were tested in 4K, but in case you're wondering, here's the full 1440p benchmarking charts, which this build clearly dominated. If you do want to see more of these games in action, head on over to the ZTT Extras YouTube channel, because that's where we're starting to post the extended benchmarking run videos for every single build. All right, so here's the full parts list and what I paid for everything. This came out to just a few bucks over $2,000, which is exactly what I was trying to accomplish. If we did swap out that FX360 AIO for an air cooler like the Thermalright Peerless Assassin, we'd actually be under $2,000. And at that price point, with the performance that we just showed, that's some serious value. And as a reminder, if you're trying to build a high value gaming PC, I just updated my build guide templates over on ZTTbuildhelp.com. For different price ranges, I show you templates with part by part explanations and links to everything if you're trying to build your own pure performance gaming PC at a different price. Be sure to let me know your thoughts about this build down below, and feel free to click the playlist on the screen now to check out my other pure performance build guide videos.